We arrived in Dugway, Utah on the afternoon of the second day. But I want to mention what a sight it was, or how astounding it was to me when we flew through the pass near Salt Lake City, and with mountains on each side of us, and then suddenly the land became flat again. I had the Great Salt Lake, a great view of that, and then across another set of smaller mountains that were in the desert type environment, and landed at Dugway, Utah. We were housed in an army barracks that was pretty primitive by housing standards in the military at that point in time. And we had access to a mess hall. Dugway was the chemical proving ground for the Army, and there was lots of Army there. We settled in and began doing what we did, keeping the airplanes maintained and whatever else we were called on to do. And then we had an opportunity to go into Salt Lake City on Liberty, and that was quite an experience. I remember I went into town with Deke, the hydraulics guy, and the crew chief from the older AJ1, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name. But we caught a ride into Salt Lake City in some way. I don't remember exactly what. There were a couple of the people that went out there that had cars, that took cars with them. It was a choice if we were told that we were going to fly with the plane, and then we could not take our car. If we had not been told that, then I could have driven out there, but I think it probably worked out all right the way it was. But anyway, we got into Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City is an interesting and beautiful city, and of course there were quite a number of soldiers in town, but there was only maybe 10 or 15 sailors in town, so we were a little bit of an anomaly, and we had a good time. There were some unique things under Utah law. For example, if you wanted to have whiskey, and you went to an ABC store, or the equivalent of ABC store, and there was a desk over in one corner, and you went to that desk and bought a permit, and then you took the permit up to the counter and bought whiskey, and then you took the whiskey down to a bar and bought the setup. I was not a heavy partaker of alcoholic beverages at any time, and certainly after all that kind of effort, I think I was less inclined to become a partaker of alcoholic beverages. But it was interesting to see the differences between the rules in North Carolina and other eastern states that I'd been involved in, and Utah. But we had a good Liberty, and then went back to Dugway and worked for a week. I remember one other time that a couple of us went into Salt Lake City, and we were sightseeing and messing around, and it got a little bit later in the day, and we had not figured out exactly how we were going to get back to Dugway. But somehow we wound up at the little town that was halfway between Salt Lake City and Dugway, and somebody took us that far and dropped us off, and a friend of mine that was in the team and I began hitchhiking, and suddenly we saw this big Packard coming down the road, and he stopped and invited us in. The North American Aviation factory rep was a man by the name of Charlie Jewell, and Charlie had been into Salt Lake City as we had, and was on his way back out to Dugway. So he loaded us up into his Packard, and we got home on time.